Welcome to the Master Your Millions podcast, the show all about your financial potential and leaving a legacy for future generations. Here are your hosts, Jason and Scott Henderson.
Great, Scott. Yes, I am happy today to have with us a guest host. Carter's here today, and our guest interview in our interview seat is Brandy Vega. She's a dynamic entrepreneur, media guru, mother, philanthropist, and advocate. In fact, she's the founder of Vega Media Studios, a leading video production and media studio. At the same time, she is the CEO of DANcan, a tech startup focusing on digital authentication. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Welcome to the show today, Brandy.
Excited to be here.
So are you a native of Utah, or where did you hail from originally?
No, I'm originally from Arizona, but we grew up in an interesting group. And so I've lived in about 10 states. We kind of bounced around. I ended up graduating, though, from Utah.
In Utah. And what was it that, and as if I remember correctly, right after high school, you joined the Army, correct?
Yeah, I did. I actually joined the Army at 17. I graduated high school 6 months early, and I was, while my friends were on senior trip, I was getting smoked at boot camp in Fort Jackson, South Carolina. I was a broadcast journalist and public affairs specialist.
And how did you land that particular, I mean, was that your intent in going in to be in broadcast journalism, or?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. All I ever wanted to do from the time I was 10 years old was be a news reporter. I loved media. I remember watching TV and I just thought, that job, I want to do that. That looks fun. They get to go on TV, they get to tell stories, they get to travel. And so I started doing it in junior high and high school. And, I was trying to figure out, I came from a single mom who, we just didn't have the means. So finally, my senior year, I was like, what am I going to do? How am I going to pay for college? And it's kind of funny because actually the Marine Corps called me and they said, hey, what do you want to do? Broadcast. We have that in the Marine Corps. You want to meet with us? Sure. You pay for college? Okay. Went to go meet with them. And I was so naive. I didn't know the difference between the branches. And I was running late and lost. And I actually ran into the Army. And about 5 weeks and 5 tests later, they had a job for me as a broadcast journalist in public affairs. They only took 22 a year. They were trying to fit me in a fighter pilot position because I hit the scores, I guess, so high, but that wasn't what I wanted to do. He said, there are people dying to do this. I'm like, yeah, dying, keyword, not me. So.
Wow. And so then were you ever deployed overseas?
Yeah. Yeah, I did my boot camp at Fort Jackson. Then I did my advanced training at the Defense Information School in Maryland. I trained at the War College, but I went overseas to Germany, Croatia, the Balkans, Macedonia, Kosovo, kind of all over there. I was deployed during September 11th, almost got shot down twice, got shot at on a border. So we had some pretty unique and interesting experiences in my career, but it was really cool to be able to work at the War College and train, colonels and generals and global leaders. I got to interview the president of the United States. I got to do some really fun things. And because of my career early on, I was actually reporting for Fox News Network, an affiliate, when I was just 20 years old. I was the youngest reporter they had ever hired. So that was kind of fun. And Jason, just real quick, I don't know if you know this about me. I have my insurance license. I'm a huge, huge fan of what do you call it? The investing you call it?
Infinite banking concept.
Infinite banking. Yeah, I was just drawing a blank. Like, huge fan of that. That's why I got my insurance license.
Also, you could write your own policies?
Yeah.
Good on you. Well, we'll talk a little bit about that. I generally like to bring that up as part of this.
Yeah.
Kind of highlight
I'm
some
so
of the things.
busy with everything else. I don't do it much, but I do referrals because I'm with a lot of high net worth individuals who understand this.
Cool. Okay, so I need to come back then to restart this. You were talking about being shot at different president. So I'm going to ask you a question based on that. So which president was it that you got to interview? Can you say, or is
George W.
Wow. And was it a long interview, short interview? Tell us, was it enjoyable?
Yeah, actually, it was wonderful. I mean, I was in Kosovo deployed there. It was before the September 11th attacks. He showed up, he spent a few days with us on base, got to know him a little bit and his wife. He actually led a task force run. So he was in the front. He led our whole group on a run. And I just got to kind of tag along on part of the White House press pool and do some interviews and stuff. It was great. Like I felt like as a soldier, he genuinely cared about our well-being.
That's fascinating. That's quite an experience. So transitioning out of the military, you stayed in media. What was your next step and how did you go about that?
Yeah, so I stayed in media and worked off and on as a broadcast journalist, news reporter, anchor. I shoot, I edit, I produce. Like in the military, they had us learn every single position of production, which made me somewhat valuable so that I actually went to the VA for a little stint. I was their video production specialist. I did all their satellites and coordinating. And so I ended up working in TV until about 2010. And then I took a job for a company. I'd interviewed a CEO. They were doing some humanitarian work and they had done a DVD. Anyway, interviewed them. We had a good relationship and they offered me a job to come on as their vice president of media, marketing, and sales for this global company. So I decided to do that. And then I built that company for about 3 years, doubled sales, did a bunch of things. And I was like, I'd been freelancing with a big corporation organization. And I just thought, I wonder if I could build my own business. I didn't really know anything about it because I'd always worked for somebody else, but I had freelance experience where you're kind of a contractor. So in 2013, 2014, I built my first company. I took a leap of faith. I built a production studio and I haven't looked back.
Well, and through all these different companies that you've been through, let's talk a little bit about your team
Mm-hmm.
through that. Because we talk a lot about on our podcast how important team is to the entrepreneur. Too many people out there are solopreneurs and they believe that they can do everything themselves, which is a complete fantasy. You don't recognize your own weaknesses and try to at least collaborate or hire those fantasies, you're getting nowhere. What have been some key people on your team in the different environments that you've been in?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because when you say team, I think, okay, I had my military experience where I was I led a team, right? We were doing things there, led a team of soldiers in broadcast journalism, public affairs, and print. And that's different because if somebody does good, great. If somebody does bad, you're all punished. So, there's one of these things. And like even right now with my company, we do a lot of great things, but every now and then something's just going to come up and you're going to have a failure, right? We did an event, we had an equipment failure, and you look back because as a leader, you're responsible for everything your team does. At the end of the day, the buck stops with you. And so that's been a tricky one for me is because you're trying to dial in. Your team is critical. Your team is so important. And that's actually been one of the challenges I've faced. But now when you get the right people in the right seats doing the job and you can have that level of trust, it's just been critical. It's helped elevate us to a level that we weren't able to hit previously. And one thing I've also learned, I'm a creative person, but I'm also very driven. I'm numbers, I'm goal oriented, I'm looking at things like that. So when I sit there, sometimes I have a tendency to, be like, oh, this is costing me $1,000 an hour to have you guys, hanging out talking or whatever it is. I'm looking at it going, are we being productive enough? And I stopped doing that. This has been helpful for me as a leader. And I started team building these relationships, not worrying about the dollar amount, looking at the quality and what we're getting. And it's really changed our dynamic and made it a better place because now we're coworkers and we're friends. And the environment for me is, can they do the job? Will they do the job? And are they a team fit? And so you get sometimes people there who aren't a team fit, and that takes away from the dynamic of the team and the overall emotion. And we had that last year. We had a couple of people who really brought the energy down. And we've replaced some people, and it's great. So I love it. I love a team. Super important, super critical, can make or break business and your mental health.
Your own personal.
Yeah. And theirs, being in a toxic environment. I had my dream job once, and I was doing the job I absolutely loved, but my boss was so toxic that my dream job became a nightmare. And I think it's almost in the situation, sometimes you can almost have a nightmare job, but a dream boss or a dream organization, and you want to still be there. It might not be what you love, but you love the environment.
I love that. What would you say in the event you were to be talking or coaching a new entrepreneur? What would you say would be 3 top things that they need to be looking for when they're building their team?
When you're building your team, I think the most important thing is finding people with character. I mean, make sure that they can do the job, but you can build skills. You can't always build character. The other big thing for me that I've learned really in the last 5 years that's brought me a lot of success is good mentors. Finding good mentors. For me as a leader, I only know what I know, right? I know what I went through in my experience, and I've gotten to a certain point, which has been great. But then I look out and say, well, if I want to go here, how do I do that? And so I've joined a few masterminds, and I found people that I admire in the industry, and I found really good mentors who teach me how to avoid that and how to hire better. I've been reading a ton of books. In fact, this is one we got that I think is really good from Jeff Hoffman, Scale at Secret Knock. But I've been reading a lot of books about how to make the right hire, because that's one of those things where you invest so much time and money when you're bringing people into your business or your organization. The first few months are just really spent on training. And if you're losing them after that, so I think the most important thing you can do is take the time to have a good hire. And I like to get referrals from my people. I really do, because everybody can doctor a resume and make it look good. And everyone can kind of put a good foot forward on an interview. But I think when you really spend the time to dig in, it's like buying a house. Like, you get the home inspection, you get these things done. Do this with your people. Dig in a little bit and see why did they leave their previous job? What do people have to say about them? And kind of implement that before you just do a quick hire.
Thank you. So you're a mom, right?
I am.
And yet you're very, very successful in what you've done. Talk to us a little bit about how you've sort of navigated those two paths, if you will. Being a
Yeah.
professional out of the home and also a mom at home. How many children do you have?
A blended family with 5. So my husband has two children, 18 and 20. And then I have 3. I've got a 22-year-old, 17-year-old, and a 6-year-old who I adopted through foster care. So I have a little guy that I adopted when I was single. And I was a surrogate. I've done a lot of things in my life just by moving forward in faith, and life doesn't always turn out the way we think it is going to. I mean, I pictured myself being the next Oprah or Katie Couric and not being a serial entrepreneur here and doing things on this scale. And I actually, as a mom, it's hard. I never had an option because I spent most of my time as a single mother to decide if I was going to stay home or work. Working was always something I had to do. But I think it would be something I choose to do too, maybe not quite as much, but I love working. I feel like I'm a better person and better mother when I feel that other sense of accomplishment as well. So for me, I always had to balance it with quality over quantity. There's a lot of people out there who have quantity time with their kids, but it's not quality. So for myself, with my limited schedule, I tried to make every minute count. And I tell myself this day in and day out, and I share it with my friends: choose kindness, give grace, lead with love. And so quality time, choose kindness, give grace, lead with love. And that's been great. That doesn't mean it's been easy. I would try to take an annual, at least 1 week vacation, no phone, with just my children. We'd go on a cruise, or we'd go camping, or we would go do something where we could really bond. And being an entrepreneur too, when I left my corporate job, my VP job, I was able to go to Donuts and Daughters. I was able to go to work after I took my kids to school and be there close to when they were home so I could work from home. It gave me a little bit more flexibility than I had previously, but that still doesn't mean the road is easy because we know parenting is hard. You have 6 children, and I think, is that right?
That's
6?
correct.
Yeah. I almost lost one of my children to suicide at 12 and again at 14. So I actually run a nonprofit as well. And we have a campaign called Promise2Live, the number 2, and Promise2Live. That's super important to me because so many people are struggling, from children to CEOs to burnout to elderly parents and people who are lonely, like the lack of connection with social media and with technology. So that's a big part of my mission and what I do. And that's part of the reason I even do DANcan, which is the digital authentication. We authenticate content so people can tell the difference and have truth, trust, and transparency. Because in a world of AI, deepfake, manipulated, and synthetic media, there's so much propaganda and fake, videos and information that you can't believe anything. And I feel like that led to and is leading to a lot of people's poor mental health.
Not that you bring that up, that is something like wanted to talk to you about. That's very fascinating. I've heard, the possibility of a nightmare scenario where, say, my youngest daughter calls and I pick up the phone and she says, "I'm in trouble, da 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 da, 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 I need you to do this, whatever," and I act on that, and it's a fake, right?
Yeah. Billions and billions of dollars in scams a year, and it's climbing at record levels.
Yeah, your DANcan is something to help cancel that or make that or prevent
Yeah.
it.
So the
Tell
way
us
it
more about
works,
it.
the way DANcan works, and it stands for Digital Authentication Network Certified and Non-Negotiable. So Dan can validate, Dan can authenticate when others can't, Dan can. So essentially what's happening is with AI, deepfake, synthetic, manipulated, artificial, all of these things that are happening at record levels, people, you can't tell, like, you can't trust anything that you read, see, hear, because it can all be manipulated. Literally a $1 app in 1 minute of our time, we were able to take the president's voice and make him say anything we wanted him to say and put it out. And politicians are using this for political propaganda. There's all kinds of things that are happening, but they're using it like children and even parents. They have parents' voice calling the kids and grandparents. There's a story right now in Utah and Cache Valley about sextortion. This is happening at an astronomical rate, especially to younger men, but it's happening to people everywhere where they tap into your computer and they tap into this stuff. So what we do is, before you release any content like this podcast or this video, you would authenticate it. We have a software platform where you can authenticate video, audio, documents, anything before you release it. It records it globally in a safe database. And then once you share it, you have an authentication tool. So if anybody alters your video or audio or photo or document, 1 pixel, frame, deleting a period, anything, we know it shows up as altered. So if anyone alters the content that you've authenticated, you have your authentication tool, it will show up as being altered. So we can put the authentication tool on sites who care about reputation management, maybe a news station, maybe CNN, who are putting out content all the time. We can authenticate to help protect against piracy. So audio books and whatever people are putting out there and that they're stealing or sharing, we can authenticate it on a network that shows a timestamp, that shows who authenticated it, when they authenticated it, and if anyone's altered it. So CNN releases their news story, somebody takes it, and it's not just like AI and deepfake, it's malicious editing. So they go in there and they want to take something you said and cut out the first part so that it sounds like you said something horrific. Then it will show as altered, so that they would have that tool. And somebody says, "I don't know if this is real or fake." You drag and drop it. And if it comes up green, yep, this is a good one we authenticated from Jason on, in April, or it shows up altered red X. So it's one way to fight against this. There was literally a deepfake detection challenge they did a few years ago where they brought the world's leading experts. We're talking 2,000 of the brilliant minds in AI and artificial and deepfake from around the world. They had a $1 million prize, and their entire job was to spot the fake videos. And this was like 2, 3 years ago before it got even more advanced and hard to tell. And the top person only got 65%. So it is virtually impossible to tell at all what's real or fake. The only thing you can do now is authenticate what is real, what is from you, who did it, and then that's how we're going to know. And it's unfortunate that we're in a position like this. I do have a quick tip though on what you mentioned. I would say to you with your children, come up with a safe word. Come up with your family word. Maybe it's bluebird. I don't know. I'm just saying something. So when you have a call like that with your mother, your daughter, if something's going on, then you would say, "Hey, what's our safe word?" And if the person doesn't know it, it could be altered. Because every time you answer the phone, you're like, "Hello, hello." They're recording your voice and they can use it and they're able to hack into systems. So that's ridiculous. We're trying to, as part of our platform with DANcan, is just to educate people on the dangers and how you can protect yourself with cyber kidnappings and cyber crime and voice crime. There was a company in China just a few weeks or months ago, they lost $25 million in a deepfake video from their CFO or their CFO, their fake one. So yeah, I mean, it's happening and it's only getting worse by the second.
Where can people go to be educated more on this? You said that's what DANcan's doing. That website that says, "Hey, here's what to do."
Yeah.
Where would you point people?
So we just launched our company. You can go to dancan.ai, DANCAN.ai, and you can learn a little bit more there. We've got contact us. You can kind of see what we're doing. We're working, we're again just launching the technology is live, and we can authenticate all kinds of things so people can reach out to me on the website. They can find me at vegamediastudios.com. They can find me online at Brandy Vega. I'm one of those people. I'm doing a lot of things. We do monthly mental health town halls with Silicon Slopes for our suicide prevention efforts. I'm launching a TV show that's going to be national in the next few weeks. We're in pre-production. We're doing a live global show September 10th. So if people want information on that, it's promise2live.org. I don't know. I love being involved in so many of these things because at the end of the day, it all connects. Your home life, your business life, your community, and all of these little things from our businesses and what we're dealing with. And even if it's like, oh, I'm not making enough money. Oh, the economy and inflation or whatever, it kind of, it triggers because it bleeds into every part of our life. And so what I love about what I'm doing is I have this sense of urgency. I wake up every day determined to help people because I believe lives depend on it.
Oh, that's awesome. I really appreciate that. So we often talk to people about the infinite banking concept, and on a scale from 1 to 5, what would you say is your familiarity with it? A 5.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love infinite banking. When I talked about mentorships and groups and masterminds, I'm a part of Zenith Mastermind, which is incredible with Jeff Flam and a bunch of people. And I've been in that group, gosh, I don't know, over 3 years. And I was at one of the trainings and somebody was talking about infinite banking. And it blew my mind because you get to a point where you're like, nobody really teaches you about money and you don't think about money when you don't have it. And then you start getting a little bit and you're uneducated on what you do with it. And so it sits maybe in your account because you're afraid to tie it up and whatever else. So I listened to him talk and it just blew my mind. I was like, infinite banking, absolutely 100% yes. Came back home, got my insurance license. I'm going on my 3rd year of having that. I'm a huge fan of being smart with your money and smart with your finances. And I absolutely love compound interest. Who doesn't?
Uninterrupted compound interest.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it all ties together exactly what you're talking about. And even then turning around and being able to show the next generation. I mean, Carter, you're fairly familiar with it, right?
Absolutely.
And why is it that you're so familiar with it?
I'm so familiar with it because my dad writes policies. Got two of my own. He's written every policy that I have.
You know what I love about it is the fact what really, really struck me is I thought, I was a single mom for many years making $20,000, $30,000, and it was really hard for me. But with a minimal amount of investment, I'm thinking with my children, when you know better, you do better. When you have things that can change people's lives, I think you owe it to them to share it. And that for me, I was like, I learned something that is life changing. I want to share it with people because if I can start my 20-year-old on this plan when she's my age, she's going to have much more wealth than I ever dreamed of having because of that timeline. And with, as little as a few hundred, $500 a month, if you're starting young and you're opening an account, come on. Why didn't anybody tell me this? I feel like sometimes the wealthy get wealthier and the rich get richer because the rest of us are just uneducated. We didn't know these single tips and tools and things that could really help us. So I feel, as somebody who's struggled with a single mom who worked 3 minimum wage jobs and being a single mom myself, barely above poverty, and finally not making it until I was about 40 years old, really, I'm just thinking everyone deserves to know the information and how they can create wealth before they hit 40. And if we don't share it with them, who will?
How do we better share it with them?
Well, I did tons of videos online talking about how it works and what they can do. And I think listening and learning from people about it, like, what is it? It sounds scary sometimes. And I remember even this, sometimes you have opportunities in your life. So maybe I would just say, and I'm not writing policies, just for the record, but you have opportunities in your life where things are presented to you. I was presented for Bitcoin and it was about $380 a coin. And I sat across the table with one of my friends and I said, and he's like, you really need to buy Bitcoin. And I said, $380 for a virtual coin? Like, who would do that? It's not even a real coin. And if I had put money in that, this was 14 years ago. How many years ago was it? Anyway, it was a good chunk of change ago. I would be super rich. And I missed that opportunity. And I kind of look at that with infinite banking. It's like time is on your is on your side. So when's the best time to plant a tree? Now. So if you're youth, do it now. If you're an adult, still do it now. Don't sit there and wait. And I know it's scary sometimes with the economy and the job market. And it was back in 2008, maybe. There were other investments I was looking at and I was afraid because of the elections. And I'm like, the world's going to end anyway. What's the point? And I didn't invest when I should have in these things. And I look at it now and I go, dang it, the world didn't end. We're still here. I could have been a lot wealthier if I had just done these few simple things. So I'm trying to teach that to not just my children and my family, but to the next generation. That's why it's important to have mentors. That's why it's important to talk about these things and think about your future, because it comes really fast. Like, I was 20, it feels like 2 years ago,
It seems like that too would play into or add into the whole idea of the promise to live. The promise is life is getting better. That's one thing I liked about the infinite banking concept is there's guarantees, right?
Yeah.
At least the minimum of what you're going to have next year or the year after, the year after, the year after, right? And you say, wow, I have something to live to that I can enjoy. I can that promise is more on the promise side of it, right?
Yeah. And I think, again, with the infinite banking model, one of my fears was, well, if I put this money, I have this little nest egg, and if I put it somewhere, stock market or IRA or, whatever I'm looking at, if I need to access it for an emergency, I'm going to be penalized and taxed and it's going to stink. And so I had that fear where with infinite banking, you can put money in there and you still have the ability to access it if you need it, at a certain time. So I like that idea. And with Promise to Live, our biggest thing is, life is beautiful. It's wonderful. There's lots of things, but sometimes people don't feel that. We feel down and desperate and in despair. But what the promise to live is literally every 40 seconds, somebody dies by suicide. That's unacceptable. It's preventable. And people are actually scheduling their own euthanasia in other countries where it's legal. A 28-year-old just scheduled one because she feels hopeless. And what we're trying to do is bring hope, resources, tools, let people know they're loved. So we're losing them every 40 seconds, but they can go to the website, promise2live.org, and they can make this promise. And this is what we ask them to make is promise if you find yourself struggling, if things go down, if you lose your job, if you lose your spouse, if you lose a child, whatever it is, promise that you'll reach out to a friend, a family member, a trusted resource, or call or text 988. 988's been out, gosh, pushing 2 years. And the latest study said only 18% of people know about it. So we're trying to let people know that there is hope, there is help, there are resources, there's people that love you. So we're on a mission. Let me show you these for those who are watching. We have these things called pocket hugs, and they're coins that you can hand out. And it says, when times are tough and you don't know what to do, here's a hug from me to you. Call or text 988 if you're struggling. And it has our website, which has resources. But the simple act of giving these out, and we're on a mission to give out 100,000 this year, it shows people when you hand it to them, somebody cared. And sometimes that's all we need is connection. We're more connected digitally and virtually and through our smartphones than we've ever been in the history of time. But we're more disconnected as humans than we've ever been in the history of time. And I think that that's leading to our poor outlook on life is we need connection. We need to be loved. We need hope. We need community.
That social media, though, we may be more connected, yet we're not genuinely, I don't know how to say this. I get on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, and all I see is my friends and people I know doing phenomenal things. My first thought is, well, I stink.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not as good as that. Well, they're in Prague. Well, that stinks. I want to go there. They're in Hawaii. Well, that stinks. I want to go there, right? I think that level also feeds into this whole thing of despair and less hope. It's like I don't have any hope to go to, wherever or to do whatever. I mean, I never got to interview the president of the United States, so I'm a lesser human, right? How do we combat that? What is a way? I mean, I love their coin thing, and I think that what we'll do is the podcast will commit to buying a bunch of those coins and give them out and to people. I really think that's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, comparison, Jason, is the thief of joy, right? And that's what social media has been designed to do is everybody has it better than me. There was a girl overseas, she's 16 years old. She posts on Instagram, I'm feeling depressed tonight. Should I kill myself? Yes or no? 69% of her so-called friends said yes, and she did. I think it's just so hard because you and I are dealing with this as, 40, 50-year-olds, and you've got teenagers trying to process the same level of information on their value and on their worth. And it's just devastating. And they're impulsive and they're seeing all this, and there's so much propaganda and brainwashing going on. The suicide rate amongst youth has gone up 71% since 2010. Why? Well, I mean, there's a lot of factors. It's not a singular cause, but we know these social media, this lack of connection, poor health, lack of sleep, the things we eat. Like there's a lot of things that go along with it. But one of the things we're doing with the pocket hug to really try to help with this is we're writing handwritten, heartfelt letters of love and affirmation, letters we wish somebody had written to us when we were struggling. And we're giving those out too. And so we've done some fun events, and this might be, if somebody's listening, we're putting together packages. You can get the coins right now. We've ordered cards, but we're putting together packages. I had a women's retreat. We had 100 women there. I wrote, and a few others, 100 handwritten letters. We put the coin in it. And at the event, all of them were different. No two letters were the same because they were all written from the heart. And, you can meditate, you can pray about it, you can ask the universe, whatever it is that works for you. I prayed about it. I wrote these letters. Some of them had some kind of detailed stuff. You know, you might be going through this. I'm sorry. Here's help. Here's what I went through. The world's better because you're in it. You made it through all the hard times and all the hard things you've been through. And we all feel this way, you know, just things like that that are encouraging and uplifting. And then I laid them out on a table. And as the women came in, I said, you know what? Pick the one that calls to you. None of them are the same. Maybe there's one that's written for you. So they all independently pick their letters. They go sit down, and then we have them open them. And I saw people just tears. It was like, how did you know? I needed this. I needed this. And then they all had their coins in there. And then our service project that night was every lady at that table, all 100 of them at the event, had to write 5 letters and give them out within the month. So 600 people touched with one project that took 2 hours, right? It's getting outside of ourselves. Most of us consider ourselves shy, and we're all usually on our phones. And so giving people the opportunity to have a token calling card, a reason to talk to somebody, to let them know. I've been giving these to people on the train. I've been giving them to people at the drive-through window like this. I gave one yesterday at fast food. And the kid like almost started to cry. And he said, how did you know I need this? And I said, well, if you're going to take a pocket hug, you got to get a real hug because I'm here. And I gave him a hug, and, you know, like everybody's fighting battles we don't know about. And we're all doing our best to get through the day. And when it really matters, humans come together. That's who we are. We're good. We want to connect. We want to love each other. I think we've just forgotten a lot of ways on how to do that. And sometimes we're afraid to be vulnerable.
You said at the beginning that I want to know whether that's you or we were quoting someone. Comparison is the thief of joy. Is that what you said?
Mm-hmm.
Is that you? Is that Brandy Vega?
I've heard that quote from somebody, and I don't know who to attribute it to, but I've heard that quote, and it's true. Comparison is a thief of joy, because, you know, it's like that story about, you know, the guy who wishes he had a bike, and then the guy who has a bike that sees the car, and then the guy driving the car that sees the sports car. And, you know, it's always like we're always comparing, and if you're always looking for the next thing, you're never happy. Because somebody's always going to have it better than you. That's just the way it is. So you can't compare yourself. You got to just be happy with who you are and what you're doing. You got to have goals. You've got to have meaning in your life. If you're not doing things that really matter, if you're just trying to make a buck, money will never match meaning. It just won't. You can have all the money in the world, but you're going to lack meaning if that's all you're after. But you can be doing things that are meaningful, and you'll be as rich as can be. It's just, it's here. It's here. It's not in the bank.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Brandy. And just as a parenthetical statement there, there's a book out there called The Gap and the Gain. I don't know whether you've read that or not. It goes right along with what you're saying. You know, when we're always comparing to someone else, comparing to an ideal, that's what we're comparing to an ideal. We'll never get there. I'm sure the wealthiest people in the world still compare something. They lack that, and they could be very, very unhappy. You're right. It's in your heart and in your mind. You get your heart right and your mindset right, everything falls together.
It takes a community, Jason. I do want to take the opportunity briefly to tell your viewers or listeners, if any of this is resonating with you and you're looking for a way to do it, join us. We want ambassadors all over the world. We're working with companies. We want partners, advocates, sponsors. Like, there's something. Everyone can do something. The only thing you have to have is a desire to do it. If you've got time, give time. If you've got money and no time, give money. Like, we can all do something to make a difference and to help one another. It's just a matter of wanting to do it.
Absolutely. I invite every single listener to go to Promise2Live, the number 2, Arabic 2, right? Not spelled out, .org, and purchase several coins and give them out.
Make the promise to live. Whether or not you're struggling, the promise is, if I find myself struggling, I will reach out. And part of what we're doing with this campaign, as I mentioned, 71% of people or children online have the numbers have increased by 71%. So we're asking people to make the promise to live and then share it on your social media platforms. When you share these taboo topics that are so stigmatized, you help stop the stigma. You start conversations. When you start talking about this, it gives people the power to know they're not alone and to reach out for help and resources, which we happen to have on our site, or people can call or text 988 anywhere in the United States for help. So that's what we want people to do. Whether or not you're struggling, make the promise to live, share the promise to live, and then join us on our mission, because we've got 113 countries who participated last year, and we've got ambassadors popping up all over the world.
Go do it, everyone. We'd appreciate that. But, the creators of this podcast really, endorse that and think it's a great thing. We will have contact information and stuff in the show notes in the event you didn't write it down, or you can always rewind and listen. But we want to have that right there, maybe even a hot link that people can go directly to that. We generally do right at the very end, Brandy, we ask our guests to throw out something to the universe that's a big goal. Something that you want to accomplish, or you'd like to see have happen. And with that, we want to formally invite you to come back on the show when that comes to be. Okay. That when you accomplish that thing that you're going to throw out there for us, we want you to contact us. We can celebrate with you and come back, and we're going to have a celebration podcast.
Sweet. I love parties. This is a hard one, because as you say that, I think about a couple of big goals. A big one I have with DANcan is to really get that out there and get it out to the big distribution companies like Disney, Warner, Sony, these big groups, so that we can start to fight piracy and work with big companies like CNN on authenticating their content, and large news organizations. That's on the business side. But I don't know if you can tell or not, I'm a little bit passionate about mental health and suicide prevention, because I'm one of the lucky ones that got a second chance with my daughter. And I actually promised Heavenly Father, if he gave me a second chance with her, I'd do the work. So I'm putting it in hardcore on this, because I am so fortunate. And I'm happy to say she's graduating a year early to show me up. And she's got a scholarship for art, and in college, she's incredibly talented. But my big, big wish and intention for Promise to Live is we want to do 100,000 coins this year, 100,000 letters, 100,000 promises, and we want to reach at least 1 million people minimum. So that's our big wish for Promise to Live this year. That's my intention, and
for 2024.
It's going to happen. Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, that I like that one better than the first one, because it's very quantitative.
Yeah.
When you hit that 100,000, 100,000, 1 million, you need to text me and come back on and let's talk further about it, because this is a topic in my church, I work with 150, 18 to 21-year-olds every week, and this is a huge issue that makes me nervous. Makes me very nervous. And yet it's something I because of that, I'm passionate about it too. And I want to help, even if one, right? If you prevent even one, you've done such a world of difference. But anyway, thank you so much for being on our podcast. For those who want to reach out to Brandy, her contact information will be in the show notes. And if you want to hit us up on Facebook, Instagram, wherever, we're on all of them, please do. And please remember to give us a 5-star review and subscribe. It really helps boost the listenership of the program. So back to you, Scott.
Thanks for listening to Master Your Millions with Jason and Scott Henderson. Check the show notes for any links or contact information about today's guest. Make sure to follow the show so you don't miss any future episodes.